that they have written it out all the way to where we are right now.
Yeah, that's deep.
Leading up to how to tell the future, how to not lose power over these rebellion African Americans. For what we have done to them, maybe they might have was saying, keep your enemies close. So as the timestamp kept going on, the 18th century came upon.
Mm-hmm.
Keep that in mind about what I just explained through my perceiving knowledge of the history of the nation. So as we move on in the time machine, 18th century came upon, and the northern states has abolished the slavery. You got the 1793 Fugitive Slave Act, and then you had the 1831 Nat Turner Revolt of the Underground Railroad.
Right.
I was saying the history of George Washington or the forefathers had to have a vision of ways to knock down and help this nation from a 1831 Nat Turner Revolt, rebellions, and things of that nature. Now, I was just stating that 1793, the Fugitive Slave Act, which prevented people that helped fugitives to flee to the north. All of this still stimulates from what we finna lead up into the
income gap.
And we got to get to understand the South and the North.
And if you are enjoying the show tonight, please like, share, add us as contact our webpage at www.wordpress. Please contact our page at transitionalchangesmission.wordpress.com, or you can check us out on Podbean at transitionalchangesmission.podbean.com, or you can send us a message at tcmissionspeaks@gmail.com.
And yes, and we love the support and you taking the time out to listen to our show. Yes, Transitional Changes mission is about change and transitioning to the change that's upon us now, which is beautiful. And we appreciate the people that has taken the knowledge in about the history, or I feel that I'm calling out to the people of the audience that if you have any knowledge that can add on to the knowledge to enlighten me about history, please feel free to message us at tcmissionspeaks@gmail.com. And we will have another series about this racism, because racism, I don't feel that it can be covered all into this one episode. Mainly with this episode series, we just discussing or just making our first step into the discussion of racism.
Right. It has so many different complex layers of it. It's like an onion. You have to peel it back layer by layer. And you also have to look into all the areas and aspects just to get an overall general view of racism. Experience is one thing. Knowledge is another. So you mix experience with the knowledge, you have a total picture of what it is, what it means, how it feels. Greece has one of the worst records in the European Union for racism against ethnic minorities. This was according to the BBC. Anti-immigrant sentiment has long been high, especially against ethnic Albanians, who form the largest minority. Until the 1990s, the BBC notes, Greece has been an extremely homogeneous society. With the fall of communism, many immigrants from Eastern Europe came to Greece. Albanians especially have been targeted by a lot of racist sentiment. Some hostage taken by a few Albanians in recent years has not helped the situation either. Russia has seen violent anti-racism on the rise in recent years, together with the rise of neo-Nazism, which is a cruel irony given the immense death toll the Soviet Union suffered at the hands of Nazi Germany during World War II, although the previous report is from 2006. And this is the Amnesty International 2010 report. It shows that despite greater recognition of the problem, effective programs to tackle the issue still do not exist. In 1987, a sensational discovery was made by a Sydney University team led by Australia's most celebrated prehistorian Professor D.J. Mulvaney. They reported that the Australian population in 1788 was 750,000, or 3 times the previous estimate. They concluded that more than 600,000 people had died as a result of white settlement.
Wow. A lot of people might not know that it was over here in this nation, like I was stating in Jamestown, when those 20 African Americans was brought here in slavery to help the South in their labor endeavors. That started the movement of 6 million to 7 million enslaved African Americans being brought here to America, which was lead to 2 separate states. A lot of those was 50% northern and 50% southern.
In June 1998, One Nation, an Australian Nationalist Party in Queensland, won 25% of the votes with their main lines at fighting immigration by non-whites. This was made possible where unemployment was high and where it was easy to convince the people that immigrants were taking their jobs, as it was served to be a convenient excuse and avenue to vent frustration. In a speech, the party leader said that Australia was in danger of being swamped by Asians, and they also questioned the special welfare benefits for Australia Aborigines. The reaction to that meant the same party won only 6% of votes 2 months later in the state's elections.
Wow. That leads up to the nation knowledge about change that started incrementing into time.
Right.
For instance, in 1865, that led up into the abolishment of slavery, which led up to a lot of other laws and empowerment movements that helped the African Americans involved with America. But at the same time, the reason why I touched up on that history, you got to have the watchdogs, that's what I'm calling the watchdogs. And with that, throughout these times of error, you have the Civil War that happened. Once the Civil War was over, African Americans was gaining their freedom, but in the South, that labor was still needed. Now, the history of it shows that slavery did a huge part of the economical finance of America. So when the Civil War was done, that labor was taken. In the South, had a lot of complaints about that, which started the Reconstruction era. And within that Reconstruction era, a lot of laws helped African Americans. And then undercover laws like the Black Code laws, the Jim Crow laws was born.
Right.
And basically those laws was to say that the African Americans are gaining too much power and we giving them too much power. So therefore these laws was agreed upon in Congress. And 2 different presidents came up, or congressmen, or very, very established, knowledgeable African Americans like Booker T. Washington, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman. A lot of uprising African Americans started learning things and started helping the movement go against the watchdogs. So what I believe, which even now, which has driven the watchdogs to be undercover. But we still got to touch up on some more history before we get up to them.
Yes, and I would like to take the time out to thank everybody.
And yes, we're going to thank you as we drop another break in, and hopefully, and we pray that this knowledge is helping you get an understanding why African Americans are facing racism now into today. When we come back from this break, we're going to touch more up into the present time to lead up into the future. But we appreciate you taking the time out to listen to this hot topic, the topic that can change the world, change the dynamic mind states of everybody. if we all just get along.
This is your host, Queen Summers.
And King Summers.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Transitional Changes Mission podcast show. This is your host, Queen Summers.
And your host, King Summers.
And we hope that you are enjoying our topic of racism tonight. In the U.S., racism is a well-known issue. From racial profiling to other issues such as affirmative action, police brutality against minorities, and the history of slavery and the rising resentment against immigrants. We will divulge in what's going on right now in the present with all the senseless violence and killings and everything that's going on, especially now since we have Joe Biden in the seat as the president. You know, we're seeing a whole lot more Confederate flags flying around happily, Trump flags. We also see that we have some flags that say Black Lives Matter. So we have a lot going on with the racism, and we have more communities coming out talking about it, making it an issue to talk about. And while we're talking about it, I hope we're also coming up with solutions